Girl Filipina, feed me and I will heal your son. Millionaire did not believe, even the impossible. Robert Harrison, CEO of the largest chain of private hospitals in the United States, almost choked with the French $1,000 when a fragile Philippine child approached the VIP table of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. "Sir, give me food and I curate your son," Lila said with a soft but firm voice, pointing to the 10-year-old wheelchair boy next to the businessman. His dark eyes seemed to carry an impossible wisdom for his 12 years old. The silence that settled in the environment was sharp. The conversations in the crystal chandeliers ceased. The waiters stopped with the trays in the air, and even the ambient music seemed to decrease in volume. Robert Harrison, accustomed to running dollar meetings, was momentarily without reaction. Lila Santos had arrived in the United States just 2 years earlier, brought by her mother Carmen after an immigration process that had cost all the family's economies. Carmen had worked as a nurse at Philippine General Hospital for 15 years, specializing in neurological rehabilitation therapy, before deciding to try a better life in America. "Security!" shouted Robert, recovering the composure with a mixture of indignation and embarrassment. How did this child come here? Her eyes toured the restaurant, looking to blame for the breach of security that allowed a girl clearly outside the economic pattern of the establishment to reach her table. Michael, his son, discreetly held his father's arm. The boy had lost his leg movements after a car accident 3 years ago, and since then Robert had spent fortunes on the best experts in the world. Nothing had worked. The doctors were unanimous. Complete lesion of the spinal cord with no possibility of recovery. "Dad, let her talk," Michael murmured, but Robert was already red with anger. "Do you have any idea where you are, girl? This is not a charity," he said, getting up from the chair with all his imposing height. "I pay more in taxes in a month than your whole family sees in a year. Don't come to me with these ridiculous mystical antics." Lila didn't go back. On the contrary, he stepped forward, approaching Michael's wheelchair. "I know exactly where I am, Mr. Harrison, and I also know exactly who you are." The way she spoke her name made Robert feel an inexplicable shiver up the spine. There was something in that child's stance, in the way she stared at him without fear, which bothered him deeply. 3 years ago, at Memorial Day, Lila continued, the accident happened on the Brooklyn Bridge. It wasn't just trauma in the marrow, it was something else. She lightly touched Michael's hand. "He feels tingling sometimes, especially at dawn, doesn't he?" Michael widened his eyes. It was true. He had never told this to his father, let alone doctors. "I was afraid that they thought they were inventing false hopes." "How do you know that?" Robert babbled, his initial arrogance giving way to growing restlessness. "Because my mother was one of the best neurological rehabbing therapists of the Philippines before coming here," Lila replied simply, "and because I grew up learning that sometimes Western medicine forgets that the human body is more complex than any medical manual." Robert felt something move in the bottom of his stomach, a mixture of curiosity and distrust that could not control. "Your mother, where does she work now?" "She cleans her hospitals at night," Lila said without bitterness in her voice but with a truth that cut the air like a blade. "Harrison Medical Center, Neurological Wing. Every night for the last 18 months. The world seemed to stop for a second. Robert Harrison, the man who commanded a medical empire, found that the woman who could have valuable insights on her son's case was literally working under her nose, invisible as most cleaning staff. "This is impossible," he murmured, but his voice no longer carried the same conviction as before. Lila smiled for the first time, a smile that had nothing childish. "Mr. Harrison, in the country from where I come, we have learned that impossible is just another word for have not tried the right way." The two safety of the restaurant finally arrived, but Robert gestured to stop. There was something in that child, in the way she talked about her son, who aroused dangerous curiosity. "My mother watches a lot of things during her work nights," Lila continued, her eyes never leaving Robert's. "She sees how doctors are sometimes limited to what they have learned in the books, forgetting to observe the signs that the body itself gives." Michael leaned forward in his chair. "Clearly," I stressed. "What kind of signs?" "The neurological recovery microsignals that traditional examinations do not detect in the first 2 years post-trauma," Lila said with technical accuracy that made Robert frown, "especially when there is partial compression instead of the complete section of the marrow." The technical words coming out of the mouth of a 12-year-old made everyone around even more perplexed. Robert realized that the other clients in the restaurant were beginning to turn around to observe the unusual scene. "How does a child know these things?" he asked, his now lower, less aggressive voice. "Because I translated hundreds of English medical articles into the Tagalog to my mother when she was studying for revalidation exams here in the United States," Lila replied naturally. And because I learned that knowledge is not old when you need it to survive, the silence that followed was different from the previous one. It was no longer embarrassing or shock, but a kind of reluctant recognition that perhaps there was more in that situation than Robert initially perceived. If this story of prejudice, missed opportunities, and second chances is playing something inside you, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple immigrant child was about to reveal truths about medicine and humanity that the most powerful man in the American health system never imagined that they could exist well under his nose, ignored by the very arrogance that blinded him for extraordinary possibilities. The tension in the restaurant was palpable. Robert Harrison looked around, realizing that all the other diners now discreetly observed the situation. His reputation as an untouchable man was being challenged by a 12-year-old child in public. "You're telling me that your mother works at my hospital and I don't know?" he asked, his voice laden with skepticism and a tip of nervousness. "Carmen Santos, dawn shift, Monday to Friday," Lila replied without hesitation. "She always comments on how doctors leave the medical records around the table, especially the most difficult cases. Cases like your child's." Michael leaned further forward. "Dad, she knows things that doctors even discovered. How does she know about tingling?" Robert felt a wave of irritation mixed with uncontrollable curiosity. "Listen here, girl. My son was examined by the best neurologists in the country. Dr. Williams of Johns Hopkins, Dr. Chen of Mayo Clinic, Dr. Rodriguez to Harvard. If there was any hope, they would have found. Dr. Williams diagnosed complete injury based on a resonance 3 years ago," Lila said calmly. Dr. Chen confirmed without taking new detailed tests. Dr. Rodriguez repeated what the others said. None of them asked about ghost sensations or tested reflexes at specific times. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert knew she was right. The doctors had been unanimous, but also hurried in their conclusions. "My mother saw many similar cases in the Philippines," Lila continued. "Patience and correct stimulation techniques can reveal alternative neural paths that standard exams do not detect in the early years." "This is impossible," Robert murmured, but his voice no longer had the same force as before. Lila stepped back, keeping her eyes fixed on his. "Mr. Harrison, I know that you built your fortune by buying lower hospitals and firing employees to cut costs. My mother told me that she lost her previous job when Harrison Medical Group took over Pine Valley Hospital." Robert's blood froze. Pine Valley had been one of her most profitable acquisitions 2 years ago. He had fired 60% of the team, including several experienced nurses. "Carmen Santos was a nursing supervisor of the neurological rehabilitation wing," Lila continued, her voice still calm but now loaded with a sharp truth. 15 years of experience dismissed in an email because operational restructuring was cheaper than keeping qualified employees. Michael looked at his father with an expression that Robert had never seen before. It was disappointment mixed with something ashamed. "She had to accept working as a cleaning lady in her hospital because it was the only place she hired her," Lila said. "But do you know what is interesting? She has never stopped studying neurological cases. Every night while cleansing offices, she sees the medical records left on the tables." Robert felt the floor move under his feet. This is a violation of medical privacy. He is a worried mother who has recognized family symptoms in the medical record of a boy named Michael Harrison," Lila said. "And he found that his own former chief was the father of the child who could help." Revelation hit Robert as a hollow in the stomach. His own corporate arrogance had removed exactly the person who could have valuable insights on the case of his son. "She tried to make an appointment through the official channels," Lila continued, now with a tear running down her face. 3 times. "It has always been denied because cleaning employees are not allowed to suggest medical treatments." Michael held his father's hand. "Dad, let her try, please." Robert looked around the restaurant, aware that his reputation was being shattered in public. But for the first time in years, that didn't seem to be the most important thing. What does your mother propose exactly?" he asked, his now low and vulnerable voice. Lila wiped her tears and recovered her composure. 3 weeks of specialized neurological physiotherapy, combined with low-frequency electrical stimulation at specific times, based on tingling patterns that Michael feels. "What if it doesn't work?" Robert asked. "So you lose nothing but 3 weeks and may learn to listen to people you think are invisible," Lila replied. What Robert didn't know was that at that moment, 3 floors above the restaurant, in a corporate office, another drama was unfolding. Carmen Santos had been summoned to an emergency human resources meeting accused of inappropriate behavior by a security camera that allegedly caught her stirring in confidential documents. And while father and son debated about giving a chance to Philippine medicine, Carmen Santos was about to find that his brave daughter had not only the hope of Michael in play, but also the job that supported his lives. Because sometimes fighting for justice means risking everything you have, even when you have almost nothing to lose. 2 weeks had passed since the restaurant. Robert Harrison was in his office on the 47th floor of Harrison Medical Center, contemplating a decision he never imagined he would need to make. At the table, 3 folders were open: Michael's full medical records, an investigation report on Carmen Santos, and an experimental treatment proposal that challenged everything he believed about medicine. Dr. Patricia Wilson, head of the hospital, entered the room with an expression of poor disapproval. "Robert, I need to talk about this situation with the cleaning employee. Carmen Santos was caught photographing medical records with her cell phone." "Photographing?" Robert raised his head, surprised. "Security cameras recorded everything. She was specifically documenting neurological cases, including Michael's." Dr. Wilson put a tablet on the table, showing Carmen images apparently taking pictures of documents. "This is a serious violation of medical privacy." Robert studied the images with growing attention. There was something wrong there, something that made no sense. These images, when were they captured? "Last week. She was confronted yesterday and denied everything, but the evidence is clear." Dr. Wilson crossed his arms. "I recommend immediate dismissal and criminal proceedings for violation of medical privacy." At that moment, Michael entered the office, pushing his own wheelchair. "Dad, you need to see that." He extended his tablet, showing a video on YouTube. Lila's mother posted this morning. The video showed Carmen Santos in his small apartment, surrounded by hundreds of printed medical articles, neurology books, and detailed handwritten notes. Her voice, in a Philippine accent, methodically explained neurological rehabilitation techniques that she had developed by combining Western medicine with traditional Philippine practices. "My name is Carmen Santos, and for 15 years I worked as a neurological nursing supervisor in the Philippines," he said in the video. "In the last 18 months, working as a cleaning lady at Harrison Medical Center, I observed cases that could benefit from unconventional approaches." Robert felt the blood freezing. The video continued to show Carmen explaining Michael's specific case, not to mention names, but with precise details about symptoms and treatment possibilities that no doctor had considered. "She never photographed medical records," Robert murmured, looking at the security images again. "She was transcribing handy information, then researching at home and took her own notes." Dr. Wilson frowned. "This does not change the fact that she accessed confidential information without authorization to try to help my son," said Robert, his voice loaded with an emotion that surprised everyone in the room. "While I paid fortunes to doctors who repeated the same diagnoses for 3 years, a woman working as a cleaning lady was studying his case for free, in your spare time." Michael held his father's hand. "Dad, you need to know her personally. Lila brought me here today for that." It was then that Robert realized that Lila was in the waiting room outside, accompanied by a small middle-aged woman with a cleaning lab coat and an expression of unshakable dignity. Carmen Santos entered the office with cautious steps, clearly intimidated by the environment, but keeping the posture upright. His eyes briefly found Robert's before they settled on the floor. "Mrs. Santos," said Robert, getting up, "I apologize for circumstances. Dr. Wilson, could you give us a few minutes?" After the neurologist came out with obvious reluctance, Robert gestured for Carmen to sit down. "I want you to know that I understand why you did what you did, and I want to hear your proposal for Michael's treatment." Carmen took a deep breath, looked at her daughter, who nodded encouraging, and started talking. "Mr. Harrison, in the Philippines we develop techniques that combine low-frequency electrical stimulation with specific body awareness exercises. Michael presents signs that alternative neural paths may be forming." She opened a handwritten folder, full of diagrams and notes. "I need 3 weeks, 2 hours a day, basic stimulation equipment, and permission to try something that may seem unconventional." Robert studied the roles with growing fascination. The approach was detailed, scientifically grounded, but incorporated elements that no American doctor had even mentioned. "If it doesn't work?" asked. "So you lose nothing but time," Carmen replied. "But if it works? If it works, my son may have a real chance of walking again," said Robert. Michael leaned forward. "Dad, since I met Lila, I feel different things on my legs. It's not just random anthills. It's like something waking up inside." Robert looked at Lila, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. "Why did your daughter do that in the restaurant? Why did you expose yourself that way?" Carmen smiled for the first time. "Because she saw an injustice being committed, not only with Michael but me too. When you fired me from Pine Valley, I had treatment proposals for 3 patients who were ignored because they came from a Philippine nurse." The revelation hit Robert like a slap in the face. "Did you try to submit proposals at Pine Valley?" 3 times, Carmen said, "all rejected without even being read. So when I saw that the son of the man who destroyed my career needed exactly the kind of help I could offer, I felt it was destiny. Robert realized he was facing a unique opportunity, not just helping your child, but of correcting an injustice you had committed without even realizing it. Lady Santos, he said, getting up, I would like to make a proposal, not only to treat Michael but to officially work in this hospital again, as a specialist in unconventional neurological rehabilitation. Carmen's eyes filled with tears, but she kept the composure. What if the treatment doesn't work? Then you will still have returned your professional dignity, replied Robert, and I will have learned that competence has no nationality or social position, Lila finally said, her clear voice cutting the emotional silence of the room. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find out what really matters. The question is, are you prepared to find out if you really believe in medicine, or just the money it can generate? Robert looked at his daughter, then to Carmen, finally to Michael. For the first time in years, I did not know all the answers, but perhaps, he thought, that was exactly what he needed to find out if he was still able to be surprised by life. The day of treatment came as a silent storm. Carmen Santos entered Harrison Medical Center through the front door for the first time in 18 months, no longer carrying cleaning materials, but a leather paste with his new badge. Carmen Santos, MD, Neurological Rehabilitation Specialist. Robert had turned an entire room from the hospital into an experimental physical therapy laboratory, equipped with the best electrical stimulation devices that money could buy. But today, only Michael, Carmen, Lila, and Robert were present to witness something that would challenge everything that traditional medicine believed possible. First, I need you to understand that this may not work, Carmen told Robert while preparing the electrodes. And if it works, it can be a slow and gradual process. Michael was lying on the stretcher, more hopeful than he had been in 3 years. I trust you, Dr. Carmen, and Lila as well. That's when Dr. Patricia Wilson erupted in the room, accompanied by 2 security guards and a man of suit that Robert did not recognize. Robert, I need to stop this immediately. This woman is being investigated by the FBI for medical fraud. Robert's blood froze. Medical fraud? The man of suit presented himself. Agent Richardson, FBI. Mrs. Santos, you are being accused of practicing medicine without valid license in the United States. His Philippines were not recognized by the American Medical Council. Carmen remained calm, but Lila stepped ahead. Agent Richardson, my mother's medical license was approved by the Medical Council last week. Here is the documentation. She extended an official folder that made the agent frown. This is impossible. Our informants reported that his informants reported false information, interrupted a family voice from the door. It was Dr. James Mitchell, former crewman of the Philippines, now medical director of Johns Hopkins. Carmen Santos is one of Southeast Asia's most respected neurologicals. I personally endured her medical revalidation. Dr. Wilson paled. James, you don't understand the situation. This woman was accessing medical records illegally. This woman, said Dr. Mitchell with authority, was conducting a survey approved by the Medical Ethics Committee on Alternative Neurological Rehabilitation Techniques, a research that has already shown promising results in 3 other patients. Robert felt the world turn around him. 3 other patients? Carmen finally said, her voice loaded with the contained emotion. Mr. Harrison, during these 18 months cleaning his hospital, identified 12 cases of spinal cord injury that could benefit from the techniques I developed. I was able to help 3 families who agreed to try unconventional methods. Michael lifted on the stretcher. Dad, let her finish the treatment, please. It was then that Robert realized something that made him feel nausea. Dr. Wilson had an expression not by surprise but anger, as if your plan had been discovered. Patricia, Robert said slowly, how did the FBI know about Carmen so quickly? And how did you know exactly when you stopped treatment? The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Wilson looked at Agent Richardson, who was clearly not expecting to be questioned. Lila took another step ahead, taking her cell phone out of her pocket. Maybe this helps to clarify things. She showed the screen to everyone in the room. It was an audio of a telephone conversation. Dr. Wilson's voice was clear as crystal. I need you to stop this experimental treatment before it works. If a Philippine immigrant could heal Robert Harrison's son with methods that our doctors failed, it will ruin our medical credibility and my position as a chief neurologist. Robert felt the room turn around him. Patricia, have you sabotaged the treatment of my own son? You don't understand. Dr. Wilson tried to defend himself. If we allow people without American medical formation to practice medicine here, let's open dangerous precedents. People without American medical formation? Robert's voice was low. Dangerous. Carmen has a doctorate in neurology, 15 years of clinical experience, and developed techniques that our doctors didn't even consider. The only difference is that she was born in the Philippines. Agent Richardson kept his documents, clearly embarrassed. Mr. Harrison, it seems that we receive incorrect information. I apologize for interference." While the security guards and the agent left the room, Dr. Wilson tried one last defense. "Robert, you can't rule out years of medical protocol because of what, Patricia?" Robert interrupted, his voice loaded with a fury that surprised everyone. "Because of prejudice? Because of arrogance? Because of the fear of admitting that perhaps our medicine needs to learn from other cultures?" Carmen put a hand on Robert's shoulder. "Mr. Harrison, if he allows me, would like to continue Michael's treatment, but now with the entire medical team observing, total transparency." Michael smiled for the first time in weeks. "Dad, let Dr. Carmen show what she knows how to do, and let everyone see that sometimes healing comes from where we least expect it." It was when Robert made the decision that would change not only his child's life, but all his vision of medicine, prejudice, and the opportunities they lose when they judge people for their origin instead of their competence. "Dr. Wilson," he said, turning to the neurologist who had betrayed his confidence, "you are dismissed, effectively, immediately." And while Carmen prepared the equipment for what could be a historic moment in medicine, Lila whispered to Michael, "Sometimes people need to almost lose everything to find that salvation can come from the hands that they chose to ignore." What would happen in the coming minutes would not only change Michael Harrison's life, but would challenge all the American medical establishment to question his own prejudices on competence, origin, and the true essence of medicine: heal, regardless of where healing comes. 6 months later, Harrison Medical Center was a completely transformed place. Carmen Santos walked through the corridors no longer as a cleaning employee, but as director of the new Integrative Medicine Department, a position she had created by combining traditional Philippines techniques with modern neurology. Michael Harrison, now 11, ran through the hospital garden during his voluntary physiotherapy sessions with other children. His steps were still careful, but firm. Full recovery had taken 3 months of intensive treatment, challenging all previous medical prognosis. Robert watched from his office window, now decorated with international recognition certificates for medical innovation. Harrison Medical Center had become the first American hospital to officially implement integrative medicine protocols, attracting patients and researchers from around the world. "Dad, Doctor, Carmen said today we are going to visit the new rehab," Michael said, entering the office with Lila next door. The girl, now 13, had become a kind of young ambassador of the program, translating not only languages, but entire medical cultures. "The center that you both designed?" Robert asked, smiling to see the unlikely partnership between his son and the girl who had turned her lives. Lila nodded proudly. "It will serve free immigrant families who are unable to access specialized treatments. My mother already has a waiting list of 200 children." The new Carmen Santos Integrative Rehabilitation Center occupied 3 floors of what was once an empty administrative building. Robert had invested $2 million in the construction, but the return in terms of reputation and personal satisfaction could not be measured in cash. Dr. James Mitchell, now permanent hospital consultant, entered the room carrying a thick paste. "Robert, the results of the first 100 cases dealt with by the Carmen protocol are extraordinary. Recovery rate 340% higher than conventional methods." "And Dr. Wilson?" Michael asked, his childish curiosity still present despite all the maturity gained. Robert sighed. "Patricia lost her medical license after ethical investigation. She is working as a medical insurance consultant." Ionic, considering that she always criticized who did not practice real medicine. Lila looked out the window, watching the families who arrived for consultations in the new center. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find out who they really are. Dr. Wilson has chosen fear instead of curiosity. Carmen entered the room at that moment, carrying his tablet with the agenda of the day. Her eyes shone with a confidence that Robert had never seen during the months when she cleaned those same corridors. "The International Conference on Integrative Medicine has confirmed our main presentation," she announced. "Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and Mayo Clinic want to implement our protocols in their hospitals." Michael jumped out of his chair. Mother Carmen, how it started to call her. "Does that mean other children like me can walk again?" "It means we will stop wasting knowledge because of prejudice," she replied, affectionately touching the boy's hair. Robert got up, walking to the window that gave a view to the garden where dozens of patients were exercising under supervision of physiotherapists trained in Carmen's Philippine-American method. "Do you know what is most ironic in this whole story?" he said, turning to Lila. "If I hadn't been so arrogant at that restaurant, we had never discovered that Michael's salvation had been working on my own hospital for 18 months. Lila smiled with that early wisdom that characterized her. Sometimes God puts the right people in the right places, but it is up to us to choose to see them. At that moment, Robert's cell phone rang. He was a journalist at the New York Times asking for an interview about the case that revolutionized American medicine. The hospital had become the subject of international studies on how institutional prejudices can mask innovative medical solutions. "Do you know what was the biggest lesson I learned?" said Robert, hanging up the phone. "Competence has no accent, nationality, or social position. It has resulted." Michael held Carmen and Lila's hands. "And I learned that sometimes the person who can save us is right in front of us, but we can't see why I walk with my eyes wrong." Carmen laughed, a laugh full of relief and realization. In the Philippines we have a saying, "Ang taong nagigipit, ese patalim kumakapit," who is desperate to cling to a blade. But I found that sometimes it is not despair, it is faith. Robert felt his eyes fill with tears as he watched his son running freely through the corridor. Something 3 renowned doctors had said it was impossible. The arrogance that had almost cost his son's recovery had also cost him years of opportunities wasted from learning from people he considered invisible. 2 years later, the Harrison Santos integrative medicine model was being implemented in 43 American hospitals. Carmen had received the Medical Innovation Award of the Year, and Lila, now 15, had already been accepted at Harvard with full scholarship to study medicine. Robert Harrison learned that true wealth was not in the bank accounts he controlled, but in the ability to recognize value wherever he appears. And Michael learned that miracles do not happen by magic, but when brave people refuse to accept that impossible is a definite answer. The Philippine girl who once asked for food only in exchange for hope had not only transformed a family's life, but the whole American concept about medicine, prejudice, and the extraordinary opportunities we lose when we judge people for appearances rather than capabilities. If this story of overcoming and transformation has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring accounts of how small acts of courage can revolutionize whole lives. Leave in the comments, have you ignored someone who could have changed your life? Because sometimes the person who can save us is closer than we imagine, just hoping that we have enough humility to really see it.